Hello witches, it's Keldon. I hope you're all doing well. I wanted to get on here today to make a review for The Craft Legacy, which just came out 2 days ago. If you have not seen the movie yet and you don't want any spoilers, don't watch this video. Because from this point forward, I will be saying things that are spoilers, so you've been warned. Okay, let's get right into it because I have a lot of thoughts and feelings and I don't want to make a super long video. Okay. When the trailer for this movie came out, people had very mixed feelings, largely because most people really love the original 90s cult classic, The Craft. It is a movie that has a lot of sentiment and meaning for people, including myself. So, and I think anytime they announce that they're doing like a remake, although this isn't a remake, this really is kind of a sequel, kind of continuation, different story, same universe situation. But regardless, people tend to be very defensive because they don't want like this original thing that they love to be like somehow tainted. Whatever. I get it in some situations, but I tend to love just getting more of whatever it is that I really like. So I was on board for this. And when the trailer came out, people seemed to be really unhappy. Um, they kind of really, two of the things that they complained about is that the special effects look really kind of over the top, like sparkly. And I don't know, I didn't mind it. I think we have to remember that there were like fantastical special effects in the first movie. I mean, they were flying and changing their hair color and like morphing into whole different people. So, um, like, yes, like these special effects um look different. But it's a whole different story. It's a whole different time period. Like, so this movie does have a very distinct, different vibe, but I think that's just fine. And I think that makes a lot of sense because here's the deal. A lot of people have pointed out, that there's a lot of things in the first movie that are kind of icky, that, don't really sit well anymore. Um, and we'll talk about that. But I think that this movie has its place. And also, there were a lot of things too in the trailer that people were like, this is stupid, but actually didn't happen in the movie or happened in a different way. So the trailer kind of tricked us. And so if you are basing your hatred completely off the trailer, like, go watch the freaking movie, Mary, and sit down. Um, yes. Okay, so now let's actually talk about the movie itself. One of the biggest things that stands out to me of this movie are the four characters. You can, like, here's the thing, like, you can hate this movie. I don't care. I mean, I do care, but you can be like, the story was stupid, the powers looked dumb, but I will haunt your dreams for the rest of your life if you hate on those girls because they were freaking fantastic. The actresses, like, just blew it out of the water for me. Um, and I'm gonna say something controversial yet brave. I liked these girls better than the original four. I said it. You can at me, whatever. Like, I don't care. I think that these girls were better. Um, and this is why. So, in the original movie, like, these four girls are friends. But when I watched the original movie, they don't really seem, I don't know, they don't really seem like friends to me. Like, they seem like they're kind of bonded by like power, not by like genuinely caring for each other. I mean, that comes out sometimes in the movie. Again, I'm talking about the first movie. But but they quickly turn on each other. Um, and again, it's all about power. But in this movie, these girls genuinely seem to care about each other. They have a lot of chemistry together, and their friendship is just so dang cute. And not just like they are super cute, but like also in the most empowered, badass sort of way. Like they are working together. They're really processing and learning things together. Um, and one of the most important things, or one of the scenes that really sticks out to me is after Timmy dies, the girls are in the bathroom and they're talking about their powers. And Lily admits that she did this kind of love spell on Timmy. And Tabby asks her, was this just a game to you? Like, and she says, all of this magic we've been doing is about really empowering each other and building trust and community with one another. Um, and I think that that's a very diametrically different dynamic than in the first movie. Um, so really the friendship between these girls um, is just really amazing and I think really makes this movie. Um, I mean, this movie is not perfect. There are certain things that are underdeveloped. There's things that kind of are left and we're kind of like, wait, what about that thing? Like you didn't really explain that. So like there are things, but I think just this solid core friendship of these girls really just ignites this whole film. And for me, like, I don't care about any of those other things. Like, I just am here for these girls. And so one of the criticisms that people talk about is that there's not really enough backstory. Like these girls don't really get a whole lot of backstory besides Lily, the main girl. And I will agree. Like I think it would have been cool to get just a little bit more of a backstory. But I think the people that are saying like these girls had no personality or no character, like must have been watching the movie with like their heads up their asses because these girls all are so distinct to me. And it's hard for me to pick a favorite, like, because I love them all. So, and in terms of the backstory, like another criticism is that Zoe Luna's character, Lourdes. So Zoe Luna is a trans actress, and in the movie, like her trans identity is mentioned like twice, and people are like, well, they really should have done more with that. And I'm okay, like I'm a cisgendered male, like I'm not the one to really be talking about this, um, but my feelings are that like that's fine. Um, Like, that's not, like her being trans is not the crux of her character. Um, and so like speaking from my experience, which is totally different, like I'm not trying to like make any like, oh, we're all the same experience, but like as a gay man, like my identity as a homosexual, like is not the entirety of my story. Like if I was a character in a movie, like I wouldn't want my queer identity to be like, oh, like that's his storyline. Like I would want it to be a part of my storyline, but I wouldn't want it to be like the definitive thing that defines my character in a movie. So, and I think in a lot of ways that helps normalize different identities because we're not making it into such a big deal. Um, I hope that translates outside of my own head. Um, yes, because obviously it is a big deal, right? It's special and awesome. But I just mean that it doesn't necessarily have to be like, like if you are a trans character in a movie, like your storyline has to be about you being trans. It can be about you being a witch. So I don't know. Take it that for what it's worth. Anyways, okay. Let's switch into talking about maleness in this movie because this is another big criticism where people were like, this movie is basically just saying that men are evil. And this is a criticism that people have had about quite a few different movies that have come out in the last few years. Um, and to be honest, I think if you're walking away from this movie with the impression that that's like the sole message from this movie, I don't think you were watching close enough. And I would encourage you to watch it again because the male characters in this movie are actually pretty dynamic. Um, so this movie does make a lot of really strong points about toxic masculinity, like patriarchal bullshit. And I don't think that those things are unfounded or undeserved. Um, so, like, just going down like a rundown of the characters. Obviously, the dad character in this film, he really represents toxic masculinity. Like, he represents like the patriarchy at its absolute fucking worst. Um, and but then the other male characters in this movie are kind of gradations of that. So obviously the kind of big prime example is Timmy. Like Timmy starts this movie, as this like really misogynistic, gross dude. Um, and through the intervention of these witches, which has its own implications and problems, which they discuss in the movie, he kind of awakens to his higher self and he starts to change for the better, right? They call him woke Timmy. Um, and because he changes, because he starts to break out of this like masculinity mold, he's punished for it. And that's really true to our society. If you are a man and you are breaking from this hyper masculine, toxic masculine mold, you're often ridiculed and punished. Um, like I've certainly experienced that in my life. So I think that that's really important. And then with the characters of the three brothers, we see this too. The youngest brother is like struggling to figure out how he feels about his dad's thoughts and beliefs. He's trying to kind of establish his own identity. We see this in the way he like tries to break the tension at the dinner table. When he's sitting outside, he's like, sometimes I just need to get away. Um, Really, he seems like the only brother that actually gives a shit about Lily. Um, so we see somebody who's like on the cusp of like, am I gonna go down this road or am I maybe gonna try to find something else? The middle brother, who's I think probably the most like problematic of the brothers, has his own point after Timmy dies where he's clearly really upset. And the dad is telling him, Timmy was weak, basically giving this kind of message that like you shouldn't have these emotions. So he too is having his own struggle. And then the oldest brother, Isaiah, who we find out actually hooked up with Timmy, is like also clearly struggling with his sexuality. So we see these like dynamic pieces. And so I didn't walk away from this movie feeling like it was saying that like I'm evil or that all men are evil. But that it's saying that like there's a clear problem in our society and these are kind of what transpires because of that. Um, so again, if you walked away from the movie with this idea that like it was clearly just about hating men, like you weren't getting it. And I'm just gonna say that you weren't getting it. Um, so try watching it again. Um, the there's so many things. There's so many things I could say about this movie. I really, really did love it. Um, so in the first movie, they talked about this deity, Manon. Everybody says his name different, so I apologize if you're like, that's wrong. But everybody are, so they talk about this deity who's this like male deity, right? So like in the first movie, Thorne Mooney just made a response video to this as well, or a review. And she and I have been talking a lot about this movie. But she points out that like the first movie is very masculine. Like there's this undertone of like maleness in it, right? Like these girls are working with this male deity and he's giving them power. Like their power comes through him. Although, like Sarah, I guess, like has power from somewhere else, which I think also kind of lends into what I'm about to talk about. So, Manon only comes up towards the end of the movie when the dad character is trying to trick Lily into surrendering her power to him. And this, outside of that, in this movie, the girls talk about different kind of goddess type energies or beings. They don't really talk about anybody specifically. Um, so this male deity comes up towards the end, and it's also in the context where the dad's talking about like power belongs to men. Um, you can only take a witch's power by getting her to give it up willingly. That her mom gave up her power, and we later find out that her mom is Nancy from the first movie, who makes a cameo at the end, and I screamed. I was screaming on the floor, shocked, surprised, aghast. It was this beautiful, magical moment that made me pee my pants. I died. I went to heaven. I came back. I became a werewolf. It was amazing. So really the implication we're getting is that Manon is this kind of evil patriarchal spirit who tricks witches into giving up their power and tearing each other apart, which totally goes back in time and heals these wounds from the first movie, like totally makes everything, like, I think in my head, make more sense. And really, I think makes the first movie even more interesting when you look at it from that perspective. Because really, I don't know, I just really like that idea. So, and at the end of the movie, these girls are still friends. They are still friends. They still love each other. They still have their powers, because they didn't turn on each other and they use their powers responsibly. And they had discussions, right? Like they had discussions. They had a whole conversation about like, okay, Lily didn't use her powers responsibly. Maybe we should bind her. And Tabby's like, well, we used our powers in some pretty irresponsible ways too. And then Frankie's like, well, maybe we should bind all of ourselves. And then they do until later they unbind themselves and stuff. But I think again, it's just this really cohesive message of like friendship and community, and really just being there for one another. So I think a movie like this is really important. I don't know if I already said this, because I'm rambling a lot, but I mean, I work with a lot of high schoolers as a therapist, and one of the things that comes up a lot is the way girls treat each other. And that's totally a symptom of the patriarchy, right? That the only way to really survive is to tear each other apart. And I don't really see a lot of my high school clients watching the 90s craft, like period, but also watching it and feeling like empowered the way that we might have felt empowered watching it when we were growing up. But I can see them watching this movie and feeling really empowered and seeing this example of true friendship between women, between girls, that is so like complex and beautiful. The last point I'm gonna make, because I said I didn't want to make this long video and it's like long already, is that people are criticizing that this movie is like woke, right? Which they do, like they kind of like poke at in the movie itself, this idea of being woke. But people are like, these girls are talking in all of these like progressive terms, it feels unnatural. And honestly, okay, so I've watched this movie multiple times now. And when I went back, the additional times I've watched it, I kind of looked for that. Like, I was like, does this feel unnatural to me? And honestly, it doesn't. And I think part of that is because those are terms that I use. And it leads me to this conclusion that if you're watching it and you feel like it's unnatural, it's probably because you don't use those terms, because they don't maybe apply into your worldview. But those are terms I use, like cisgender, all of it. Like those are terms that I use and that the younger generation uses because they are changing, right? Times are changing. We're adapting and growing, and our language is too. So I think to criticize this movie as being like woke or forced woke, is is really sad and unfortunate because I think we need more of that. Um, Especially given the way shit is in our world. Like, so, yeah. Okay. So my ending message is that I love this movie. I encourage you to watch it. And if you do watch it and you're like, this movie's bullshit, um, well, okay. But like, right, everybody's entitled to their own opinion. The only opinion you're not entitled to is the one about the girls. Because as I said, they are beautiful, amazing, wonderful, magical beings. And if you say anything bad about them, I will appear in your dreams and put tacks in your retinas. So, on that note, I hope you all are doing well. Until next time, take care. I'm going camping for Halloween. I will be filming and doing some cool stuff. So, stay tuned for that. Bye.